Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. And next, I've got two joining hosts with me, and that is Bob Williams and Rachelle Dixion. And welcome aboard, you guys. Appreciate it. And for the viewing audience, you've seen these folks before. And again, this is the Oregon Voters Digest, and this is where we're basically informing and educating you on various topic matters. And what we're talking about now is the city of Portland. And there have been many issues that we've been talking about. For those of you who have missed some of those shows, you can go back in the archives, and they will be shared with you. On the other hand, that's what basically we're going to be doing. And today's topic will be talking, it'll go all over the place with that, and that is the homeless. As you know, homelessness is still a major issue, not only in the country, but in the city of Portland, right here in the city of Portland. And that's where we're going to focus our attention. And that's a huge issue. And naturally, it's a major concern here with all of the residents here in the city. And so that's why we want to talk about this particular piece. And another reason why we want to talk about this particular piece is that, and we've been talking about other issues in the past, is that is whether or not the leadership on all these topics are really being responsive, and that's another major concern. The issue of our present mayor Ted Wheeler, has been an issue in this town. Many people are disappointed with him in regards to the leadership that he's doing. Because in all due respect, we've got a mayor and we got 4 city councilmen, and by the way, as far as the chain of command on what these issues are about, that is supposed to be the resolution body, if you will, for issues. But unfortunately, we're not getting it. And so I can go on and on and on, but I tell you, I've got these other 2 people that are on with me, and we're going to be discussing this, and I'm sure they've got their own ideas. But let me remind you one thing as we get into this particular issue, is that this still is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And we've got several people that we've elected, and they're basically the ones supposed to be responding to the solutions to all of the problems. So I'm going to throw it out that way and just get right on in. So why don't we just get right on into the deal? I know that Rachelle has been working in the homeless issue for many years. She's out there. I mean, she is really out there. And I would like for her to give us somewhat of an update in terms of her various endeavors to date since she's been on the show last. Okay, Rachelle, why don't you start off with us on the whole issue of the homeless issue aspect of it? In fact, just from a historical standpoint, why don't you also give the audience an opportunity to give them a feel as to why you got involved in that particular issue? I know you ran for office, and I knew you had that was part of your platform. But at the same time, how did you get in there? Just from a lay standpoint.
Bruce, thank you so much for having me today to talk about this very important topic. Yes, I did run for city council, and I did talk about my experience with the houseless, and I started out with originally just attempting to do a food service and address some of the health needs and dietary needs of people who live on the street. Unfortunately, I felt like I was just treading water, because the real reason that people are without food is because there's inequity in the systems, like the housing systems and the work systems. And so what people do is they try and pay their rent, they try and do what they need to do, and lastly, they take care of their nutritional needs. And so they eat very little or depend on food boxes. And so I was serving food in a healthy way, a vegan dish. And I just realized it wasn't a soup big enough. There wasn't enough food in the world to compensate for the inequity, and it just kept growing. Some people were houseless, some people were housed. And I realized I had to do something more. So I decided to run for office for position 2, which was the position left by Nick Fish when he passed away. And so now we have Dan Ryan in the position, and he's only been in there a very short time. I haven't really reviewed his activity. I have reviewed the response to his activity, and people are very disappointed in him. But I'll be honest when I say I haven't gone over the scope of his work. But I can say that we are not moving fast enough to make these changes. We see trash piling up in the street. I said to myself one day driving down the street, well, this looks like Baltimore. And as soon as I said it, I took it back. Baltimore has trash collection.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't actually see trash this way in Baltimore unless it was illegal dumping. But periodically, they just pick up the trash even if it's illegal dumping, and it's included in your taxes. So now we have a problem with waste. Now we have these huge rats that used to be seen in like sewers in big cities, New York, Philadelphia. They're called Norwood rats or Norway rats or something rats with the Nord. But in any event, this is not healthy for us. We have a pandemic, and now we're going to have more rats and more waste, and that is a very easy way to spread disease. Now we know there's another version of a pandemic coming. Do we really need a bunch of unhoused people, a lot of waste, a lot of rats? I just don't understand why this hasn't been a concern for folks. And the buck stops with Ted Wheeler. Dan Ryan may be in charge of housing, but Ted Wheeler, this is not his first rodeo. And so I would expect more from him. And perhaps maybe I'm wrong. Mr. Williams, what do you say? Am I being a little hard on him, a little harsh on him in his second term?
I don't think you're being hard at all. And personally, when I drive down the street, one of the things that I notice is that that the city is allowing homeless people to camp out anywhere, as long it appears to be, as long as it's not in Northwest. And so yesterday I went to Longview as I was going past what's the park over by Jansen Beach. It's
Delta Park.
Delta Park.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Yep.
I mean,
I was there yesterday.
This is where kids go to play. That's why we had the park, was so that the citizens of Multnomah County and of the city of Portland had a place to go for recreation. You're afraid to go there now. You're driving down Powell Boulevard. Take a drive down Powell. Take a drive down Foster. Go up as far as 122nd. And I mean, it's unbelievable. Drive along 205. People are camped out there. If you don't take control, they will. And that's the thing that the city has to understand, is that, hey, at some point, someone has to say to these people, we allowed you to camp out, but my God, pick up your trash. We allowed you to camp out. Don't destroy. Show that you're grateful for the opportunity to stay there. Otherwise, we have to find someplace else for you to go. And so being so nice to the homeless has brought the people from Vancouver to Portland.
What though, Mr. Williams?
Yeah.
Let's do one of this. Okay, yeah.
I just wanted to push back a little and say that it's not just that they want to be there, it's just that they don't have any place to go. And I'm pretty sure they would welcome Ted Wheeler having a response so they could actually go someplace. Right now they're all over, and they tell me they don't want to be out there. They tell me they want apartments that they can't find, that they don't qualify for, either because they've lost their jobs. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are in the restaurant industry. So I was a caterer. I say was, because COVID has completely destroyed that business. And so I've had to make some changes. And there are a lot of people who don't want to be out there. It's very expensive to get first and last month rent and deposits when you're making $12 an hour and the apartment is renting for $1,500 and you need to make $4,500 a month just to get in that place. So we have some huge inequities, and I agree that the mess has to be cleaned up. Right. And I believe Ted Wheeler should make a response. And I know that he did make a response in downtown Portland. Many of us don't live in downtown Portland, and we travel outside of the area, and we see how bad it is in Delta Park. I was in Delta Park yesterday, and I made a point to look over at the baseball field. And while they weren't in the baseball field, they were outside of the baseball field. And I realized they have no place to go. I am concerned about stepping on needles when I go to places like that, because there's some drug use. There needs to be safe needle deposits, if nothing else, harm reduction. I know I don't have a magic wand. I'm not going to wave my magic wand and stop drug use during a pandemic. At least we could give them a needle exchange program. At least we could give them trash bins. They don't even have trash bins to put the trash in. And I expect, Mr. Williams, probably the way you were raised, I would expect that you put the trash in the trash bin. If you used it, you throw it away. So it is a privilege to be on these public lands without being swept. And I believe that we can keep some people safer by keeping them in one spot and not moving them from place to place and then cleaning it up place to place. How about just one spot that they're allowed to keep clean with portable toilets? And what do you think, Bruce?
Well,
is that too much to ask?
I was going to ask you about the portable toilets and the defecation and urination all over the place aspect of it. And then what do you think about women being able to use those facilities after one person uses it? I mean, it's almost insulting for that matter. But at the same time, as I'm hearing you all discussing this matter, ask yourself, who's responsible? We elected these people to do the kind of discussion we're having here, but in all due respect, we want them as a mayor and the city council to solve those problems before they come to the public. Once they know that the problem is there, they should have the discussion, come up with some ideas. Don't come to the public having a discussion about the problem and asking the public to solve the problem for you. It's ridiculous.
Well, Bruce, the problem with the public is that they don't want to pay for it. You know,
No, they are paying for it, Bob. Think about it.
We are paying for it.
We're paying for it, Bob.
They're paying the small amounts now because the people are on the street. But if they move these people into housing, who's going to pay for that? Because they can't. And the housing right now not there. So,
well, Robert, can I say that it's actually cheaper for them to move into housing? And I say that as a person that last week, I've got to make some changes in my life, really as a result of the situation. And I think Bruce knows that I've had a couple incidents at my office building. It's really not safe anymore. And so I'm going to have to go into a different space. I've had to call paramedics. I've had someone breaking in. And I know that when the paramedic comes, what is that, like a $1,500 ride? It was $1,500 several years ago. So $1,500 for one ride to the hospital, and then the hospital is about $3,000 per day. So that's already $4,500 for one day. It would have been much cheaper to put this man into a treatment facility for mental illness than to do that. And police can be cheaper, so that's about $375 per day. So we're already paying. We're just not using the money appropriately. And I'd like to call myself a progressive sometimes. Sometimes I don't feel like the progressive label fits because I'm fiscally conservative. That is another word for being frugal, making a dollar holler, whatever you want to call it. I don't understand why we are paying taxes. Most people want the houseless helped, but the money is not going to them. I interviewed a houseless man who said, well, there's $53 million, floating around for our use, but we never see any of it. And they were keeping their area clean. They had a 14-man crew keeping that area of downtown clean. But the city was giving them no tools, no brooms, no garbage cans, nothing. And they said, we want help. We don't want to live this way. So you can get them into the housing, or you can keep paying $1 million contracts to Rapid Response that does biohazard cleanup. By the way, I spent 10 years in medicine. I want to let you know, When I've watched those people from rapid response, I'm actually afraid for their lives. They're out there with no gloves. They're out there removing this trash, this waste, and they don't seem to realize that there could be sharp objects in there. I saw someone just with shoes that were tennis shoes, and I was like, why are we paying for biohazard removal if we're simply just going to get trash removal, which is half the price? So I have a concern with the company we're using, the contract we gave them. They don't seem prepared to be able to fulfill the role of their contract. When they sweep, they take all these things away and throw them away, and they decide they're of no value. These things are life-saving to people on the street. We need to house them. We need to clean up our streets, and the buck stops with Ted Wheeler. And I can't say that Dan Ryan is doing a fantastic job. I know he just came in, but Ted Wheeler, this is his second term. This was an issue before. They say that Portland has increased the houseless count of the whole entire West Coast. That's how bad it is.
In 2017, there was approximately 14,000 homeless in the city of Portland. That has increased. I haven't seen the numbers for 2020, but I know in 2019, it was over 19,000. And so it continues to grow. And the reason is, what are we doing to stop the growth of homelessness in Portland? And one of the things that, for me, I asked the question because you're talking about needles and drugs, and then we pass a law that says that the police will not do not arrest you if they find you with drugs on you, a certain amount of drugs and things of this nature. And I'm going, if I live in another state that's arresting me for those drugs, and I'm a drug addict, and I can have enough on me to sustain me, why am I not going to move to Portland? And that increases the homelessness. We have to begin to think of things in a wide scope rather than the narrow scope that we're doing now, where it's okay for them to camp out here, but it's not okay for them to camp out there. We need to begin to think of this. How do we end homelessness in Portland or the surrounding counties?
Rachelle and Bob, again, I'm just sitting back listening to the discussion the two of you all are having, but at the same time, I still come back to the deal. We're supposed to we've got a mechanism in place, supposedly, the mayor and 4 city councilmen. That's why we voted them in. They're supposed to be the individuals who are responsible enough to go through the same discussion and coming out of that discussion with a solution, and then present it back, if you will, to the public through the city council meetings, okay? And then vote on it. Right. And then, like Rachelle said, for instance, with the monies aspect of it, between the county raising monies and the city raising monies on taxes for homeless, where is the money? Well, is it in salaries? The city auditor right now, the city auditor is having problems with the mayor. They're upset with one another because the mayor, the city auditor, who's elected to office, that's her job, and she's not allowed to do her job. So that needs to be answered. But instead, it gets right back to the same point. The mayor, who is the chairman of that board, so to speak, he's the chairperson of that board. And here we are. We've been talking about the whole idea. We got 4 city commissioners, and we still haven't we've been talking about districtization of the city for years. Same problem. Each commissioner should have a responsibility. Each one of them should represent a certain area. That's the districtization. We haven't done that. So my point is, talking about like what you guys are talking about. Like you say, you're aware. Still, that's not your job. Right. That's not your job. You hired someone to do that.
Well, one of the things, Bruce, that I noticed about this city council is if you don't want them to do anything, attack one. All you have to do is attack one of them, make them you let the others see how bad you can be treated. And the rest of them, they are new on the job, so they shut up and just fall into place. If you don't bring it up, Mr. Mayor, it's not going to be brought up. That's the way they are operating right now. Because, for me, I don't just hold the mayor responsible. There was also city council people that was elected to do this job. And if they're not going to bring it up so that the mayor can't hide behind whatever he's doing, it's shame on them too. So we have to go not at one, but at all and say, hey, you guys are not doing your job. And as Joanne was trying to do, her job, and as she went about it, they said, hey, here's what can happen to you if you get out of line as far as we are concerned. And and that's how she ended up in the crap that she was in. It's one of those situations where we need to attend the meeting. We not just sit back behind our keyboard and say something, or sit back on our screen and say something. We have to get off our butts and attend the meeting. If I'm working that day and you're off that day, you go and take two others with you. Once they start seeing faces there, once they start hearing it from the people and find out that you have a voice in the community, bingo, things will change.
So Bob, does your vote matters? Does your vote matter?
Your vote matters.
No, but how can your vote matter if in fact you voted on someone and they're supposed to be that responsible person?
Because I can tell you why. Because we vote, but we don't collect after voting. In 1968, as the chair of A. Philip Randolph chapter, one of the things we came up with was a slogan: collecting after electing. And we went through that process of having people show up at the meeting, and some things got changed. We've gone away from that. Now we elect people and we expect them to do our bidding, and they get there and they say, well, you're not there, so I don't have to do this. And that's the problem. They are not doing what we want, and we're sitting back complaining about it, but because they don't feel any pressure.
Okay, Rachelle, what do you think? Okay, good.
I've been putting the pressure on for a couple years. I went down to City Hall and we delivered what we wanted for the houseless. We wanted them to stop sweeping them, put them in one spot, and stop moving them all around town where we clean up this spot, this spot. That doesn't make any sense, right? We're disconnecting them from their supplies. So they have things that get thrown away, then we replace them. And they say, oh, we need money to replace the tents. We replace them. It's too expensive. This is called mismanagement. I got a lot of things from my mother. One of the things I got from my father is financial common sense. And anyone can tell you that we are not using our money in the best way. We're misusing the funds for the wrong things. And I'll give you an example. I believe the reason why houselessness is on the bottom of the list is because houseless people are too inundated with life just to vote. But we vote. We go downtown. I've been to City Hall. However, I think some of our more moneyed citizens have more of a voice than I have. But at this point, I'm ready to say this. I do realize that there are other people on city council that can work more collaboratively to come up with a better solution. But at this time, the best thing Ted Wheeler can do for the city of Portland is to resign. If he really cares about the city and he really cares about the people in the city, he needs to save us the stress, the additional stress and trauma during a pandemic when many of us are scrounging around to find work, working all insane schedule and hours just to be able to provide for our families and perhaps for our community. We don't need to focus on Ted Wheeler. Ted Wheeler is part of the reason I'm focusing on houselessness. So Bruce knows that I started a program called OpenDoorsPDX.org. And basically it's to put individuals in low barrier housing. a housing program to help them get them on their feet. And it's not really a hand out, it's a hand extended up to help people get their ID if they've lost it, get their driver's license back. No one wants to be lying on the side of the road. I mean, think about it. You know, they don't have showers. This is unsanitary.
Right.
I worked at Ted Wheeler's camp, the CP30 camp. Good concept. But then I start to hear about dysentery. Dysentery? We haven't heard that term in years. You know what dysentery is, right?
Oh, yeah.
We used to make jokes about it, but there's nothing funny about it when people are immune compromised during a pandemic and they have dysentery. This is the life we are living. We are in a third world city right now. There are times that I have stepped out of my car and I stepped in human waste. I'm no longer stepping in dog waste. And I also don't believe that a woman wants to take her clothes off downtown and use the bathroom in a public situation. I think these people are desperate. They need mental health. They need mental health capacity. They need places to stay. And Ted Wheeler is not giving it to them. The other city council members are not giving it to him. But if he didn't want to be mayor, if he doesn't want to be mayor, he could step down today. Okay, he can save us the trouble. He can step down today.
Right.
He's not equipped to do the job. This is his second term. So Dan Ryan, as I said, I don't really have a lot to say about his performance in this short time. I know a lot of people have been unhappy with it, but I can say with utmost of confidence that Ted Wheeler is going to be the leader of Portland. He is following the Portland police. That's what he's following, the Portland Police Union. Let me correct that, Portland Police Union. He's not doing any good there. That's taking away his time and his attention is going all there, taking away from the houselessness issue and the rest of the city. And what does he say he's gonna do? He's gonna clean up downtown. Bravo. Now, when are you gonna get to East Portland, Southwest Portland? When are you going to do this? When are you going to get people housed? Why are we passing all these housing bills and bonds and not housing anybody? And we keep giving them temporary housing. We paid for Jupiter Hotel when coronavirus started, and we had 2 people in a full hotel. This is irresponsible. Mr. Williams, would you agree keeping 2 people in a hotel when you could have housed so many people in the hotel? You could have just said, okay, the people with coronavirus, we'll put them on the ward in the hospital, and we'll use the hotel to either handle people who are already sick or getting sick. Nope.
Bob, you know, before you answer that question, Bob, let's put it this way. I want you to go another way with this piece. And my point is this, and you've been around this town for quite some time, and you understand what management is all about. Before you hire anybody, you'll announce the job, you'll lay it out from the standpoint of basically what's the requirement for the job and what you're looking for, and then the person comes in with what? A resume. Right. With a resume that you look at to make sure, and then you vet them, right? You vet the resume, and you invite the person in, possibly with 2 or 3 other so-called attendants, if you will, and then you guys will talk to this person, see whether or not they've got the experience in that particular job. Right, Bob? You got me?
Right.
That's when you hire them. Well, that's basically what we're supposed to have in downtown Portland. You got the chairman of the board, which is basically the mayor, so to speak, right? Who's supposed to be able to administer all the issues with 4 people, right? To a certain degree. At least chairing the committee. And then each of those commissioners are supposed to have resumes too, right? Because but the bottom line, we're doing it in a kind of a voting kind of an environment aspect of it. But it's the same process. Would you agree?
I would agree that they should, by the time they take office, they should have some knowledge of what they are expected of them. Before you run, you should have some idea of the problems or what is needed within the communities you serve. I mean, that's just basic campaigning. But what we have here is name familiarity over ability.
And money.
Yes. And if the money is behind you, then somehow or another you get elected. And it makes, to me, it makes no sense that we the people have began to be our own worst enemy, because our vote counts and we end up giving it to them. But when you had two candidates that you had for mayor in this past election, you had to take the lesser of two evils, is the way I looked at it. And that's what happened.
I think the same thing happened, is that we had choices. We didn't have good choices,
Right.
for a variety of different reasons. We had Sarah Iannarone, who was in the lead, was not the right candidate. Again, has a history of domestic violence, had some problem with apparently some folks saying that she was dishonest with the PhD. And I think that blew over fairly quickly. But however, it did leave a stain. Again, I complained from the Black community for several months, and I noticed she was not attentive. And I thought, wow, one phone call would have just simply said, hey, we're paying attention to what your community needs. Clearly, she wasn't paying attention to what the Black community needed. She used some of the folks that she knew that were people of color to further her career without their permission. She was the wrong candidate. Ted Wheeler, of course, has been defying orders. If he is the police commissioner, as the police commissioner, right? So he has that responsibility. And as the police commissioner, he has a responsibility to reduce violence. Violence has been ticking up. We've had the broken window problem. And the broken windows are not the most important part of this struggle. They're just a really expensive problem for businesses to have during a pandemic. And I want to share one other thing with you, and I'm going to let you get in here, Robert, because I see that you're chomping at the bit. But I want to say that now that we're getting the shots, I haven't gotten my shot yet, I'm working on it. But now that we're going to be getting the shots, everybody's talking about going everywhere, and they're talking about going to the beach, and they're going, out of town, and no one is talking about staying here. And so we're going to lose a huge amount of money, even when the restaurants could be open, the bars can be open, because people aren't going to stay here. They're going to leave to go socialize. The tourism money isn't going to come in this summer. So we're going to have a loss of tax revenue from tourism leaving. We're also going to have people who they're already planning to go out of state and spend money in other states. They don't want to spend money in their own community. And so that tells you that people have reached too much. The trash, the stepping on waste, stepping on needles, the violence, the crime. And Ted says, well, I'm concentrating on the crime. Well, Ted, if you're concentrating on the crime, then you're poor at that too, because crime is going up and it's a different level of violence than I've seen. This goes back, in my feeling, to the crack epidemic. You remember the crack epidemic?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And do you remember how crime was really high then? Really high, dangerous times. Yesterday, I got in my car. I put my dog in the car. Just as I was getting in the car, high-speed police chase down MLK. I jumped in the car. What is going on? You can just die walking outside. This is out of control. Where do we live? Is this Portland? I feel like I'm on the streets of Philly, Detroit, all those places that we say have the urban problem, which is another word for, African Americans. This community is mostly white. What is going on?
Okay, before you go in there, Bob, I'm not going to let you go light on this. You've been around the bend for quite some time, like I have to a certain degree, but I'm glad you're here with us. But let's go back to the point that Rachelle made from the standpoint of the runoff between Around and Ted Wheeler. And you say this, first off, a couple of things there. One is my understanding she had about $700,000 that she spent on that rerun. $700,000. But at the same time, Wheeler, who is a millionaire, that's $1 million plus, right? You got me? Okay. And then the other thing that he had, basically, the person who was calling the shot was the media. All three major medias endorsed Wheeler.
Right.
If they had stayed out of the deal, she'd won that deal.
Well,
Straight up. Two to one. Wait a minute. Hold on. So my
Okay.
point to you is that, and then you ask yourself the question: what's the definition of media? The business community. The media is basically ads, right? You got me? So
Right.
basically, that's the sort of business community downtown, because we're always talking about the protesting downtown and taking care of things downtown. But what about the other parts of the city? What about them? And like Rachelle was saying, they're all over the place, sleeping here, this, that, and the other. So my point here is that, and then who is responsible? Think about it. Who's responsible for setting up the platform to attract people to run for those positions? And how does that get out? The media. Who interviews all of the candidates running for office? The media. Who endorses them one way or the other? The media. So at the end of the day, who controls those that are elected?
The media.
And who else? And who else?
Money.
There you go. Now, would you mind answering that question?
Well, I just did. And but Bruce, we've been around long enough to know that that's the way it's been
Yep.
since the beginning of time.
Yep.
You know, he who has the goal has the power. You know, but we have the people, and unless we can get the people motivated to get involved and to stay involved, see, I'm trying to remember a saying that goes something like, because you think you got it done today and you walk away, it will change tomorrow. You know, and I think it was my dad or uncle or grandfather that told me that. Just because you think it's okay today, if you took care of it today and you walked away from it, it'll change tomorrow because someone else will come and take it, put it back where it was. And so that's what's happening with us. We're working people, and we have a tendency to go and fight an issue. We think we've resolved that issue, and bingo, we walk away and they put something else in its place that's even worse than or the same thing. And bingo, we don't have the time to come back and do it again because we got to pay the bills. And so we have to figure out a way to say, hey, when the person is running, the questions need to be, what are you going to do to improve the livelihood of the people in my community or in the community or in the city? Not what are you going to do to improve business. What are you going to do?
Who asked that question of the candidate? Who was that?
We the people need to be asking that question.
No, but who asked it now? But who asked the question now?
We do.
No.
Nobody.
The media does. Rachelle understands where I'm coming from. When she's basically called by the Oregonian to come in, she's interviewed, in all due respect, by reporters. In most cases, they have no background. It's pretty well laid out in terms of who they're going to vote for.
Yeah, but my thing is, if you are taking a person that lives in Northwest Portland and you think that they're going to have the major concern of Northeast Portland, you're grossly mistaken. I don't know why Portland has not broken this thing up into zones so that they will have a representative for their zone. You know, if you're elected all from people all over the city, I'm smart enough to remember when one of the city councilmen that I knew personally said to me, Bob, there's not enough black votes to get me elected. I got to appease some of those people in Northwest Portland, Southwest Portland, and Southeast Portland. And those are the people that vote based on what I'm looking at doing. And once I'm in, I can help over here to get things done. Say, but until then, I got to show the appeasement for those people over there. And I began to understand how the process worked. And this was back in the 70s and 80s. You know, so we, the people, have to understand, just because we have a problem, who's our representative? We don't have a representative. And we think everybody's supposed to be, but they got other things that they're working on, and we keep going down the line. And that's what I'm talking about. We have to come together and understand that we have to make a forceful front in order to get things done.
But what can we do about
the sending one?
Okay, what can we do about this mayor situation at this point in time in the city council that we have? Rachelle, talk to me.
I'm biting at the chop here. What I want to say is something that has been put into song, probably poetry, I haven't heard it, but something that Black women say quite frequently, which is, we can do bad all by ourselves. Why do we elect people and pay them a salary, then to have to come back and do the jobs ourselves? So Ted Wheeler isn't working on putting people in housing right now, permanent housing. He's warehousing them outside, and that is a measure of compassion. However, he's not working on putting them in these many empty places that he could declare eminent domain. Now, he did eminent domain, or the city has done eminent domain on other parts of our community. For example, when Emmanuel Hospital was born, when Emmanuel Hospital was built, not born, but anyway, okay, so we've done it before. We can use it. We have taken land from the indigenous people. So we can, as a city, get a hold of property and do the right thing by our houseless community. We can also pick up the trash. It isn't either or, it's and. And I want to point out another thing, since I noticed that you guys are both veterans. So you're from the Air Force, and then you got a Marine up there, and I'm the daughter of a Marine. And I can tell you that many of the people that are houseless are former military.
Right.
That is shameful. We ought to be embarrassed. People walk by these people and they don't listen to their life stories. But if you listen to them for just a few minutes, you'll find out how many of them are military and deserve services and are even eligible. But we can't even get a social worker to go down there and help them get their services that they deserve. The reason why we can come home and drink our hot chocolate in peace and walk in peace is because there's someone out there protecting the peace. And I would like to see the number of military drastically reduced. The problem with that is we have made many enemies around the world. So that's not going to be an overnight process. And until then, we have a responsibility to take care of our military folks who end up on the street. And now we have more and more military women on the street, more and more people with a post-traumatic stress disorder from the military on the street. Shameful, shameful, shameful. And to say that we can't do anything and to ask to throw the problem back in the citizens' lap, as Bruce mentioned earlier, when we keep voting for the right people to do the work, or we thank the right people, we keep giving money, and then you throw it back to us and say, oh, well, we'll put them in the park. We could have done that ourselves, and we could have done it for free. We didn't need a $50-something million bond to put people in the park. We can do bad all by ourselves. So which is it? Is he going to lead or is he going to follow? Because he should lead, follow, or get out of the way.
I agree.
Let me throw this out, and I want you to respond to this. This is the point, and I'm going to go back to Rachelle. And I was listening to what she was saying. Look at what she's been saying of late. She's been actively out there doing it. She ran for office.
Mm-hmm.
She had a resume. She had experience. In fact, I've been doing it for years, running only in the primary. In fact, I didn't want to even go beyond the primary because in all due respect, you didn't get the support. But my point is that that same media that called her in to talk to her about her qualifications, they couldn't ask her the question, or even they couldn't even understand where she was coming from because they didn't have the background. They didn't have the background. So I'm just saying, look at the record number of people that ran this last time around in each of those categories. Are you telling me we didn't have qualified people, more qualified than the people that are up there sitting up there now? Yes, very much so. And even as far as I'm concerned, I've always made this point about the whole police. The police issue is an issue. And Joanne Hardesty is the only one that's sitting up there of the 5 that at least had some introduction to the police when she was working for the Albina Ministerial Alliance. She had some indication. She had a resume. So consequently, now she's sitting there and she's not given that responsibility. Every one of those people that are elected should have something on a resume that talks to an issue that they're having here with the city. And I'm just saying to you, that's what I'm saying. But we got to go to the lead person, which is Wheeler. Wheeler has no background at all. He's a millionaire. He bought himself in all 3 seats. He ran for the county chair and he bought that seat. He had no background whatsoever on the issue of the county. And you know, and I know, and Rachelle knows, and you got to have background in all kinds of community things. The guy's a millionaire. So you can't expect him to try to relate, if you will, some of the issues and some of the things that Rachelle's out. You got to do what Rachelle's doing, or have some relative or someone that's been involved in those situations. He went to the Treasury Department, spent 4 years there, same thing. Then he comes out to the city, millionaire, same thing. So I'm just throwing this out. So we just got to hit that head first. We just got to let the people realize we need to come up with some kind of a format that says, okay, fine. When people are running for office, educate the people. You're right. Educate the people. When you're running for office, you got to show me some form of a resume.
I agree with you. But here's the problem in the city of Portland. In the city of Portland is a friendship city. The people that are holding positions are friends of the person that hires or can have the top position. They're not the person that has the knowledge. They're learning on the job. You look at your city council, they're learning on the job. You look at the people in different compartments of your city, they're learning on the job. They're afraid to buck the system because they will lose their job. And here's the problem. In the city of Portland, you have to come up with something that says a good leader is surrounded by good people. That means that you have to be knowledgeable of the area in which you are hired to run, i.e., the program that you were talking about that Ted put together. Who's on that program? How do they have knowledge of what's going on with the homeless? They have to look at a report from somewhere, or do they have experience in that area? I mean, when you put people with no experience in a position that demands experience, you get what you get in the city of Portland. And I agree with you all on that. And it's time for a change.
Yes,
but how do you get this change, and how do you find out who the people that are running, what experience do they have?
And Ted should resign, right?
Well, that's one of the things that I'm not going to get into. I'm going to say that
we've been talking about a whole hour. We've been talking about a whole hour.
The people have the power to remove him. If he's not doing the job, the people have the power to remove him.
Let's get Rachelle into that. Come on, Rachelle.
We do have the power to remove him.
Right.
And right now there's a recall. There are some folks who are working on a recall process. And I do believe that that a recall process will likely be successful. And what I'm saying to Mr. Wheeler is, given that you're probably going to be recalled and you seem to be struggling with this work right now, resign. Save the taxpayers the money. This is a unique time in history. We could use every penny we can get on vaccinating people, on taking care of our own, of taking care of the houseless, of taking care of the mentally ill, making sure that people are compensated for the work that they do, cleaning up the trash. There's lots of things we can do with Ted Wheeler's salary. But what he's doing with it right now, I don't think addresses what our community needs. Now, I'm not saying that Ted Wheeler is a bad person, because sometimes people
You're right.
conflate those things.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, what I'm saying is he's not fit for this job. I'm not saying that he might be successful in other work, but he's not successful addressing the top concerns of this city. And the top concerns of this city are economic, houselessness, climate change. All of these things actually work together. But if we're going to be a city that runs visitors and tourists out of the city, there goes our restaurant industry. Okay, a lot of people work in our restaurant industry. How many of them will be houseless if this continues, if the trash keeps piling up, if people feel like they're unsafe, if even to get in your car to cross the street, you have to worry about maybe someone being on drugs while they're in the car, because the police don't seem to be responding to the important things. They seem to be responding to someone peed outside. Now, the answer to houselessness is quite simple. Give people housing. And I want to say what we're doing instead of this in the city is we're giving elected leaders salaries to address the issues that we've asked them to address, but they're not addressing them. And then this trickles down and goes down and goes down, right? So everyone knows when we talk about houselessness, we're not serious. We're really not serious. If we're going to keep voting on bonds where the people say, help the houseless, because really, I haven't seen anybody say, don't help them. I've heard people say, well, I want to spend a little less, a little bit more, but most people want to help them. But not when you keep spending money after money after money, and you see trash lined up all over the street. You want to say, stop. Not because you don't want to help them, but because you realize that the people in the government are mismanaging the funds. Am I wrong? With all these many millions, we can't keep the trash off the street?
But the rationale, Rachelle, the rationale is that once, like you said, the people, like, they pay the money aspect of it, but who manages the money? Then that person who basically goes through the OJT situation. That's where all the meetings come from. And nothing gets done. Nothing gets done.
But, you know, one of the things that you have to realize is that when money come into the city, just because they tell you it's 53 million or 100 million, it doesn't say you can spend it any kind of way you want. It come in what we used to call, when I was on the board of directors of TriMet, it come to you in a bucket. And that bucket says it's for infrastructure. That bucket says it's for replacing buses. That bucket has money in it for replacing sidewalks, doing something in the mechanical side of things. So all of a sudden you got $100 million. But here's the thing: in the city, when they get their money in, and it's designated for something, how are they using it? Is what you're saying. You don't feel that they're using it in the proper way.
Empty your bucket.
They're not.
And so
They're not.
They're
okay.
not.
And so
Who gets the bucket?
Go ahead.
Remember when they said they were going to make the marijuana legal, and they were going to use the licensing from the marijuana licenses to pay for a lot of different programs that were great. And you know what really happened? 50% of it went to Portland police. They didn't use it for the programs for which it's intended. So some of it was supposed to go to police. They're supposed to increase their budget a little bit to deal with some of the things that might happen as a result of legalizing the marijuana. For example, you might expect some people to enjoy too much, go out on the road or something like that. And then naturally you would have a police response. But what I'm saying to you is they say, oh, it's a housing bond. Then they hire some contractor who goes way over budget, doesn't deliver on time. You know, it goes on and on and on. This is just simply mismanagement. When poor people do it, we tell them about it. We go, hey, you can't afford this. You have to stay in your budget. When is the city going to stay in its budget and actually do what we needed to do?
Bob,
I agree with you.
Yeah,
My
Bob,
thing, when you continue to hire people that don't have knowledge of the
Right.
of how to do the job,
I agree with that. I agree with that. But the key,
you're going to get what you're getting.
I'm going back to your bucket. Let's look at the city council, the city right now. When they ask for the money, it comes in this big bucket.
Right.
Who gets the bucket? The mayor.
Yeah.
The mayor. Okay. Then he's got the bucket. Then the other thing is that now there are a number of bureaus, if you will, that you basically decide. You talk about TriMet. Well, you got the water bureau. You got et cetera. Okay. So who makes this? Who gets all of the bureaus at the beginning with the bucket? The mayor.
Right.
Who assigns the bureaus to the various commissions? The mayor.
Okay.
Who signs off on the budget? The mayor. So consequently, you got to have a very responsible person sitting at that table. And at the same time, those other four commissioners have to have some sense of awareness, if you will, to be able to talk to what the people wanted. And I agree with you about the whole idea of the bureaus. I mean, the districtization of the city. Those
Right.
people should be able to speak up and represent, if you will, that money. That's not happening. And just like Rachelle said, it's not about my disliking this guy personally. It's not about, no, he's just not doing his job. I pay taxes too. But the fact of the matter is, like she said, why shouldn't he not resign? He's sitting in a situation now that said, I don't have to worry about resigning. You know what I mean? I can just sit here and play games and so what? So I can go to another step. I'm just saying, okay, fine. Just go to the next job.
Well, I don't think that he has that type of self-fortitude to where he would resign. Personally, that's my feeling. But I do believe that he would, you know, if the people can recall him, then that's what they should do.
Okay, sounds good. What do you think about that, Rachelle? Real quick. We're at the end of
Well, I am not in Ted Wheeler's mind to know what he plans on doing, but I know that a lot of people have plans, and so I don't know that his plans are that important into what will actually be the results. Because I think the community has come together, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, have come together to say Ted Wheeler is failing in so many aspects of running the city that they no longer want him to represent us. So I expect that if he does not resign, he will be recalled.
Sounds great. Well, folks, this has been quite an instruction, quite a discussion, let's put it that way. And hopefully you'll share this with your neighbors and whatever. And hey, as George Page always said, back to what you believe in. Let's keep this city of roses going, one way or the other. Okay, thanks again, Bob. Thanks, Rachelle. Appreciate it.
All right.
Have a good one, folks.
Thank you.
And the homeless
Bye-bye.
can get their shots today.
I like that.
Yes.
This is the life we are living. We are in a third world city right now.
With something that says a good leader is surrounded by good people. That means that you have to be knowledgeable of the area in which you are hired to run.